Hello, and welcome to the Trail Manners Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Manning, coming to you from the beautiful trails in Ogden, Utah, but connecting you to wherever trail, ultra, and mountain running takes us. We'll bring trail running to life with amazing athletes, discuss the latest topics, epic journeys, and get you stoked for your next trail adventure. We're sharing the moments that make life special, because even a rough day on the trail beats a good day indoors, and nothing beats time spent with good friends and great stories. Catch us here weekly for your dose of dirt, vert, and good vibes. So now it's time to top off your water, grab some cheese curds, and join us for this week's podcast, where we take you deep into the heart of our sport. It's go time. Well, hello, and welcome to episode 319 of the Trail Manners Podcast. Our guest today is runner, race director, volunteer, ultra fella, Ultra Jim Skaggs. The Trail Manners Podcast is produced for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at trailmanners.com. Come back often, and please feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trail Manners. And please don't forget to subscribe, review, and rate us on iTunes. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get after it. All right, we are here back for another episode of the Trail Manners Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Manning. We're recording this on, what's the day's date? Wednesday, March 29th. And I am joined, we're going to start with one of your, what do you call those things? Your skill sets, your hats, maybe? Race director.
Yes.
So, Jim, you are the race director for multiple races, but we're going to start with the Buffalo Run, Antelope Island Buffalo Run, which is a springtime event. Well, seasonally springtime event, but as we know, that doesn't always work out how we want.
Depends on the year. Sometimes it's winter, sometimes it's spring, sometimes it's summer.
And sometimes it's winter for the fourth time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're a returning guest. You've been on the show before. You're an ultra runner. How many years have you put on the Buffalo Run, the spring event?
So this is year number 18.
18.
Yes.
Okay, I'm writing that down because I always forget that. I was year one. This was my first ever trail race.
That's where we met.
In my whole world. Yes, year one, much different, but it was still crappy weather. If I remember, not like crappy like this.
No,
time,
it wasn't horrible.
It was
but
a little snow,
a little rainy, a little. It looked kind of like Seattle.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it was my first ever one, and literally ever since that day, I was hooked. That was just how it was. So 18 years of the Buffalo Run. We just finished, well, I shouldn't even say finished. You just put on the last edition just over the past weekend.
Right.
Have you ever, in the 18 years, seen anything remotely, not even like the same, but remotely close to that weather?
Not at my races.
Yeah.
I've run in a couple of races that were canceled. You know, you mentioned Pocatello 50.
Yep.
You and I ran that year that it got canceled. I think this might have even been worse.
Oh, I mean, I wasn't in this one, but probably where you were at on the Pocatello course at the time. But
yeah,
I bet it would rival
up that
it.
ridge.
Yeah, that was super fun. Getting lost on top.
No, it wasn't.
So what? Okay, let's kind of break down this year. So for people that don't know, the race, you'd have a 100-mile, 50-mile, and a 50K, 25K. 100-mile race starts on Thursday.
Correct.
And the early start 50-mile starts on Thursday.
Yes.
And then Friday kicks off the 50-mile, 50K, and 25K.
Correct.
So Thursday, 10 a.m. start, 100-milers are there. What's it like?
So, well, let's go back to Wednesday. So Wednesday, I always set up the course out there, go mark it, flag it, put signs out. Make sure the porta-johns are where they're supposed to be, and the tent that I rent is where it's supposed to be, set up things inside and all that. Wednesday was really kind of rainy and snowy all day long.
Okay.
And then I spend the night out there on Wednesday, and it off and on showered all night long. Not bad, just kind of a light rain. Thursday, it was kind of the same. Just, not bad. I mean, we've all run in weather like that. It's just something we do. Started out the 100 milers and early start 50 milers at 10 a.m. Got them off good start. Then things get quiet around the home front there, and my Britta, my volunteer coordinator, we just kind of hang out. And it cleared off, and it was beautiful, sunny, just light breeze. We could see it's kind of storming over against the front, but the island was beautiful. It was just very pleasant. And then as Thursday night rolled around, it started to get a little bit rainy again. Nothing terrible, but just kind of icky. And just all through the night, just a normal night out there during the 100. And then Friday morning, it was kind of the same, just kind of a little bit rainy, a little bit wet. Not really snowy at all. It just rained. And then so I got all the other 3 races started. And we were hanging out at the race headquarters, the finish line there, and had a few 100 milers trickle in. Had a few. Most of the early start 50 milers were done. Even had a few 25K runners managed to finish, and then like noon, 12:45, something like that. Just all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. It hit us just hard. I mean, there was no warning at all. And winds, I have no idea. I wish I knew how fast those winds are going, but sustained were very high, snowing extremely hard. The canopy, the sides of the canopy are Velcroed together, and the Velcro ripped loose, and so we had people trying to hold down the...
And this canopy you're talking about, this is like
This is a commercial grade
canopy. Like the stuff
30
people rent
by
for
30.
weddings and big
Right.
stuff, not
Right.
like
This
your
is-
pop-ups, because those pop-ups got trashed.
Oh, I lost so many pop-ups last week. It's unreal.
Time to recycle.
Yeah, they were pretzels.
But even that big canopy, that's a sturdy.
Yeah.
They put that in.
Yeah,
solid cables, everything.
Stakes 2 feet into the ground, and it pulled up a couple of the stakes.
And these are big stakes. They're not like your tent stakes. These are like
1-inch diameter, 2.5 foot long things. They use a sledgehammer to pound into the ground. They were starting to pull those up. Numerous people holding down the sides because we had a raging blizzard inside the tent. We managed to zip tie the sides together because we couldn't Velcro them. And finally, I had my wife pull my truck around to try and block some wind. We had another van pull around to try and block some wind. I think it helped.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but yeah.
Any porta-johns fly over?
No.
Wow. That's good.
Which amazed me. The guy from the porta-john company, he sends me a text. So did they all stay upright? And I just looked outside and was like, yeah, that's amazing.
Any of the shitters tip over?
Yeah, not a one.
That's
I was
crazy.
floored. But yeah, once that hit, I made the decision pretty quick that the race was immediately canceled.
So that was one of my things. Like what? Because fortunately, I think fortunately, unfortunately, but I think fortunately, a lot of race directors don't have to waffle with this, right? Like the decision to cancel a race, and talking a few days before, there were questions asked, would they ever cancel? I'm like, ultras don't get canceled. Like, you've got to have some bad stuff. They do, but it's so rare, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, who would have thunk that their own ecosystem on the island would bring this, as you said, apocalyptic weather in? Like, I don't think anybody saw this level of tenacity coming through. So, obviously, there was some thought process as you're zip tying and seeing the stakes come out in your head. You're kind of like, oh hell, what was the I don't say breaking point, but what was the point where you made that decision? Like what pushed you over the edge? Because it can't be easy.
Well, It actually wasn't a difficult decision at all.
Okay.
When you have a raging blizzard inside your canopy and you've got people trying to hold things down, you know that out on the course, as exposed as the trails are on the island, you know it's dangerous, period.
Yeah.
And so having to just deal with that canopy, it was an easy decision to make. Just say the race is canceled. Somebody asked me, and I said the race is canceled. We need to get everybody off the trails back here and accounted for.
Did you get, because you're on the island, and whether it's phone service or radios, where your aid stations reporting in or anything? Because I saw some videos of aid stations, people holding those 10 by 10s down. Those are ripped up. The aid station tables are flipped over. Right. Was there some communication on that level too, or were they just waiting to hear?
We let the aid stations know that the race was canceled and that they were to stop runners as they came in. I contacted the park with I have a radio since I'm a volunteer out there as well, so I contacted the park on the radio. They had already mobilized Davis County Sheriff and park personnel to start getting out there and trying to grab runners off the trail.
Wow.
They have a couple of side-by-sides that they get out, and they were starting to drive those around and collect runners. And so I just asked them, as they did, bring all the runners back to the headquarters so that we could account for them and make sure that everybody was safe and okay.
Well, because even this year it changed because the course changed.
Yeah.
Because you had to move the start-finish. It's been there for not all 18 years. It was another location when I first ran it, but you had to move to the marina because they're putting in or getting ready to put in campsites or whatever. So it was a new route. Mm-hmm. Did that cause any confusion? Whether it was like
only when the race signs blew down.
That's what, yeah. So we had Kirk on,
right,
and he talked about that, like race signs getting blown down. And
yeah,
I think
a couple other people mentioned that as well.
And I think for the most part, the island gets so much traffic from runners now, especially locally, to where maybe the local runners that were out there maybe didn't have any confusion. But I could see if you're traveling in, you'd be like, oh man, I can't see,
Yeah.
And to me, that's why I prefer to be a thick runner because the wind won't blow me over. So that's by choice, folks. But I think no injuries.
No injuries that I was aware of.
Weather-related.
No weather-related injuries.
Okay.
No hypothermia. I think the probably, I'll mention what I thought was the worst situation from my mind is that I got a lady in the canopy came up to me with her phone and said, my husband's stuck up on the saddle on the White Rock Trail where it's above the East Side Road. There's about 10 of them. They're hunkered down behind some rocks, and you know where I'm talking about up there. And they're wanting to know how they can get down. So knowing where that is, I know the winds can just come screaming over that ridge.
Yeah.
And that was the one that kind of scared me a little bit. I wasn't real worried about much of the other, but that one kind of scared me. So I immediately sent my lovely wife and a couple other volunteers out with cars down the East Side Road towards the ranch. And I was chatting with this lady's husband on the phone, and I told him what we were doing. And I said, the minute you see my truck and those other cars, I said, you bail down that hillside towards that road. And it's about a quarter mile all downhill. And thankfully, going the downhill in the direction they were going, they were somewhat protected by the wind because the wind was coming from the other direction. But they got back to the canopy, and they were fine. And after that, it was just a matter of making sure that the trails were all clear of runners. And we had plenty of help with that. We have another guy on the trail patrol, John Mulmer, who's a ultra runner.
Oh yeah.
And so he came out and went out to the Elephant Head aid station, and I don't know if he physically swept the Split Rock Trail himself. I mean, he's perfectly capable of it, but he made sure the Split Rock Trail was clear. The park made sure that the White Rock Trail was clear, and then I had all sorts of volunteers and other runners and runners' families offering help. Hey, can I take my car and go see if I can grab runners? What do you want me to do? So everybody really stepped up. There were quite a few runners which is kind of interesting. So between the White Rock aid station and the finish line is about 2.8 miles. And it's right along the fence there. And if you're familiar with the island, you know where the fence is. And there were a number of runners, goodness, actually quite a few, that were heading along that fence back to the finish line. And I sent my wife out to collect runners along there. And she comes back and she was just kind of beside herself because she said, they all refused to get in. They said they were going to finish. And I was like, well, they're only 2.5 miles away, and the weather's let up a little bit. We'll let them finish.
Yeah.
You can't force them into your car.
Yeah. That's called kidnapping.
Yeah. The authorities frown on that sort of behavior.
Yeah, they don't like that unless you have candy. If you have candy in the car, it's legit. Or
yes.
puppies.
Yeah, candy and puppies.
Well, it kind of gave me chills when you said it, because obviously doing the podcast and, being a trail runner, when you said that, like, other runners are ready to help and families and, like, how can I help? And that gives me chills, because it's like, and I'm not saying just the trail running community. There's other communities out there, but it's just such a draw when you've got people willing just to help other people, right? I mean, you see it at every trail race. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these people, I had no clue who they were. I just knew that they were families of runners or some of my volunteers that were just there at the race headquarters, and they just said, what can we do?
Yeah.
What can we do to help?
And that's huge, because you've got so much going on what you're doing. I mean, you're literally managing, okay, we've got, Davis County out here, we got the park out here, I got the aid station, I got the runners, I've got, people are coming up to you, what can I do? So having a little bit of help on top of that.
Right.
And then, like, when we had Kirk on the show, like, runners on the course look after runners on the course, like the 10 huddled behind a rock.
Right.
It's like, that's just...
Yeah, that guy that I talked to on the phone had kind of taken charge of that group and said, "Well, let's do this. If we want to live, we need to do this."
You're thinking about finishing a race. Oh, I'm going to get a blister or something. It's like, if we want to survive this, right. You start looking around, looking for the meatiest one to munch on later if you need to. But yeah, I was blown away. I mean, a lot of people obviously shared videos, and you see the weather. But again, being in it and seeing pictures and video are completely different things.
Right.
But just knowing the severity, what it takes to cancel an ultra is big. And, I mentioned on the last podcast, not that it hasn't been, but I think over the course of a couple years, there's been a couple races that have been in the spotlight for stuff just like this, right? We talk about DC Peaks, that situation, a first-year race. Obviously, over... was it Japan, China?
Right, yeah, the big one.
That big one over there. We had Mont Blanc, one of the races at UTMB. Mm-hmm. So you are seeing a little bit more of that. So, as we talk to race directors, as we are runners itself, it's like kind of, not that this stuff is things that should have been thought about 10 years ago, but that you see it more, and maybe there's more races, maybe it's climate, whatever. It makes you stop and think, as a runner, am I prepared?
Exactly.
Right? Do I take this just in case? Right. And I think, again, and I bring this on the show a lot, as a runner, I think it is 100% your responsibility to make sure you're ready.
Yes.
I don't think it's up to the race director to send an email the night before necessarily saying the weather's going to be poopy, bring a jacket. Right?
Exactly.
To me, it's like you should know as a runner that you need to come prepared. Everybody's preparedness is different, right?
There were people in shorts, and running sandals.
Okay, so were they
hardly prepared for an apocalyptic blizzard?
And I learned mine when we went to Pocatello. It was a late May, early June.
Yeah.
And I had a sleeveless running shirt and shorts. I didn't have a jacket. And I had a visor.
I carried a jacket. I actually gave it to a kid as we were going up that ridge because he was freezing.
Yeah, but I think it is, and I say this because I want all runners. It's like you need to take the responsibility, for yourself, because everybody's different. What is cold to you is not to another. What you need is not to another. take what you think you need. Please pay attention to the weather before, the race, not a week before. Hey, what do I need to pack for this trip? Like, come prepared. But I think it's also said on a race director's side is, like, it really came to effect with like DC Peaks and another one of your evacuation plan, right?
Yes.
And I know I've put on races and they ask you that in your form. If someone gets hurt, how do you get them? Right. And sometimes like, well, I just drive my car to the trailhead and throw them in the back or whatever. But when you get these remote races or races like you were mentioning, I think as a race director, there's a lot of mind shifting, especially over the last couple of years.
Yes.
Right. Like, what are we prepared? Right. Are we doing the right thing? And I think you talked about that.
I think as a race director, and obviously, I mean, I've been around the ultra scene for 20 plus now, and I've been to a lot of races, and there's obviously a lot more races now than there has been. To me, it's incumbent on every race director to think about what if scenarios, worst case scenarios. I mean, obviously you don't need to use that if it's a bright sunny day and 70 degrees and light breezes and everything's coming up flowers. But when you have a race at the time of year like mine, yeah, I mean, out of 18 years, probably 3 of those times we've had kind of crappy weather. And then last Friday we had really crappy weather.
Worst case scenario.
That was truly a worst case scenario in my book. And yeah, I was revisiting my emergency action plan today just to see what could I throw in it that would remind me if this was to happen again. And for all the race directors or potential race directors out there listening, that's one of probably the most important thing, or one of the most important things to think about is, what am I going to do if things go south?
Yeah. It's like having an emergency fire exit at a movie theater,
exactly.
Right? You don't want to use it, but if you don't have it.
But you better have it.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. And I think probably for the most part, probably as a race director, most have some type of plan, but it almost to the point now it's like you said, let's shift from the plan to worst case scenario, like go that next level, right? Like really go that next level. But still, and I'll say it again, I think at the end of the day, it's truly up to each runner to make sure that they are prepared, right? And whatever that means, everybody's different, but because I think, even as a race director, you can't, even if you plan for worst case, you're also saying, okay, I've got X amount of hundreds of runners out there. Right. So it's
I had 315 runners out there.
Yeah. And that's a lot to be
Plus,
responsible for.
How many volunteers?
Yeah.
I had at the time when that hit, I still had 3 aid stations open. 2 of them had already shut down for the day. So I had another dozen volunteers out in the middle of that nonsense.
Yeah.
That I had to be concerned with too. And, we kind of joke around a bit, but I don't want to make light of what happened last Friday.
Sure.
It was a very serious situation for a little bit, probably an hour and a half to 2 hours. Things were pretty chaotic, but we had some good help there. We put together a plan. The main plan was to get everybody off the course safely and as quickly as possible and accounted for. And, I set up one person to be the point person. If anybody walked in the tent with a bib number on, she was to write it down. I made sure that everybody that went out to fetch runners brought them back to the tent so that we could account for them. That was my main concern, was to make sure that we didn't leave anybody out on that trail and forget about them.
Yeah.
And in the end, by the time all was said and done, we were able to, given the chaos, I think we did relatively good. There was only 5 bib numbers that we could not account for, and we already knew that the Split Rock Trail had been cleared, the White Rock Trail had been cleared, the Lakeside Trail had been cleared, the Mountain View Trail had all been cleared. We already knew all that. So we knew that we had a 99% certainty that the course was clear. And so I was pretty comfortable saying that we got everybody off and we're okay.
They probably got in a car and went home.
That's what I figured
Yeah.
probably happened is 2 or 3 just said, I'm out of here, and jumped in the car and left. And
Yeah.
can't blame them.
Yeah. But, I mean, hindsight, it's always as a runner, like we
Yeah.
talk about runners dropping and just going back to their
Right.
hotel or, it's still, again, it's a runner should have some responsibility.
Right.
Obviously, this is way not something anybody's used to, but, for you listening out there, always if you're leaving the course for any reason, make sure somebody knows.
Yes.
Right? Because it's scary still.
Yeah, exactly. And that's for all you runners out there. If you're ever in a situation where the race is canceled and they're pulling people off the course, once they pull you off, don't just go home.
Yeah.
Make sure you are counted so that they know where you are, because there could be significant resources expended trying to find you when you're asleep at home in your bed or sitting in your recliner drinking a beer.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing goes with if you drop out of a race. Just
Yeah. Well, we had one year
Normal.
your race. Someone left and went to their hotel, and you finally found them.
Right.
Right. They dropped and just didn't check in.
Yeah, and so, what the Wasatch 100 says. They say if you drop and fail to notify, when you get up in the morning, you best get back out there and get lost so that they can find you.
So it's not money
Otherwise-
wasted.
Yeah, otherwise you're going to be in some trouble.
You sit there with a pina colada and wait for them to come find
Right.
you.
Yeah, whatever it takes.
What was I'm curious too, like the overall reaction from the runners, knowing that it was canceled, no matter what. I mean, what was the overall reaction you pulled from that?
I have, even in the midst of all the chaos, as people were coming into the tent and getting checked in, and they were seeing me, they'd come up. I was amazed at how many runners came up, shook my hand, and said, "This is an awesome day." This is so much fun, or just words to that effect. I'll be back. This is a great race. You put on a great event. And meanwhile, things are just
Going hell.
going to hell in a handbasket. And even now, I'm still getting emails from runners that thanking me for an awesome event. Which, in a good year, that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
In a year like this, that's like, well, okay, I guess we did something right.
Well, it was funny. I was running with a friend of ours, Harrison, this morning, and he was asking me about the race. He's like, "Man, that must have been something," because he's run the race before, and it came to a point where, and it again, I think you said it perfectly. We're on the podcast. We're talking about it. There's no way we're making light of the situation. It was a literally dire situation that was handled amazingly. However, saying that, there's always that thing that you now have a story. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you just mentioned with those runners. I mean, the story from Pocatello that year. Does
Oh,
it get
yeah.
told
We still
all the
talk
time?
about that.
Yeah, but you still talked about and I've run how many races between then, and those ones may not get so much love, but it's those unique things. Like I want to come away with that, like saying, "Yeah, I survived that day.
Yeah.
It got ugly for a while."
Yeah.
But I think it's a story, right? They go home. Everybody's safe. There's no harm. So I mean, that's right. But it's a story,
Right. And you got to admit, it's like I always tell people, trail running and ultra running always makes the best stories.
Yeah.
It's not a good story to say, "Yeah, I was running down 12th Street and almost got hit by a car."
Yeah.
I mean, that's a story. That's clearly not good,
It
but
happens.
it's not quite the same as I survived the apocalyptic storm of the 2023 Buffalo Run.
Well, it's like
Somebody suggested I make shirts with that on.
the one we had the snow bear, right?
Yeah,
a few
the
years
snow
back
bear.
that people talk about.
Well, and the 2019 Bear 100 that I ran.
Yeah, the mud and
Where it rained for 12 hours straight.
yeah, but it's the race in itself, but then you have these elements,
Yes.
good or bad, usually bad, good or bad, that really live on over a beer later on, right?
Oh, yeah,
It's like,
absolutely.
you've got nothing. I ran this, and it gets worse as the years go by.
Right.
Like your race in about 6 years, people are going to say, "I was running and a bison flew by me with the wind."
So funny story. So Karen's out picking up people along the fence line. She picks up some guy, a couple of guys, and they're in the truck. And one of them's telling the other, yeah, those winds had to be at least 60 miles an hour. She stopped and gets a couple more people. Now it's 80 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah. That's a big fish. They just get bigger. Well, so I'm also curious, like, again, having multiple conversations about this, what does the results look like where you've had some finish, right? Like you had legit finish. I saw pictures of the first 100-mile male and first 100-mile female.
Right.
You know you had 50-milers finish, but they started the day early, which is legal. Mm-hmm. And then you had some 25K finishers.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously, from a runner standpoint, Kirk was on the show. He's like, so do you think that's going to count as a DNF? You know? And I'm like, well, here's the deal. Did you finish?
Right.
and I know what he's saying and everything, but I'm curious there's not a protocol for this.
Not really. What I told all the runners when I finally got around to sending an email out to the runners, what I told them was, yeah, things were kind of wild out there Friday. If you finished your distance, because we weren't recording times, we were recording bibs, and that was it. We didn't care about times, obviously. So I told people, I said, if you finished your race, send me your time. If you were signed up for, say, the 50-mile or the 100-mile, and you finished one of the shorter distances, 25K, 50K, send me that time, and I'll just put it in the results like that.
Okay.
So, yeah, there will be a list of results. It's kind of, some are self-reported because they've sent the numbers to me. Some are legit because they showed up before things went to hell. But that's what I'm doing. I don't know what other races do. I know Pocatello 50, I don't know what they did there. I don't remember.
That was a long time ago. Yeah, I don't remember. I really don't.
And I've been in one other race that they canceled, and they didn't. I don't think they put up any results at all.
Well, I think it's one of those things where it's not a protocol thing. So as you say that, I'm sure there's listeners out there that agree with it, and some that probably are shooting holes in it, and some that are probably overthinking it, right? But at the end of the day, it's like that honor system thing. Like, I'll send you my time for my 50-miler just so you can record that, and I'm going to have a really smoking fast time for that race.
Which is fine.
You don't even register.
It's your conscience you have to live with.
But see, that's the beauty of it, though, right? It really is. Like, people get so caught up in whether it's Strava, whether it's race results on Ultra Sign Up, and all this other stuff. And I'd like to say I get it, but at the same time, I don't. Like, I think those things are for you. Right?
Exactly.
Like, when you do something great and you get a killer time on Strava, that's for you. Like, other people, people are looking, or vice versa, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's for you. Race results, those are for you, right? Like, it's the sport. It's not a high money sport. It's not, you know what I mean? So I think hopefully people look at it that way and say, it's a trail run. It was an adventure. I had a great time. At the end of the day, I'll be back type thing. And I hope that's what the approach is, because the more I kept thinking about it and talking to people, I'm like, I don't know how that would look as far as the results. The way you say it, I'm like, if I was out there, I'd be totally fine with it. Right?
Yeah, and I've not gotten any pushback from putting that out there. Instead, I've gotten about 100 people that have sent me their results that I'm trying to enter by hand.
Well, Jim, I know if they give you pushback, you're okay to push back too. So I think maybe scare some off.
Well, yeah, I don't want to scare too many people off. Then nobody shows up for the races.
Well, the rumor. I heard a rumor before the podcast and you were coming on that you don't offer discount codes for your races.
No, I don't.
That's one of your MOs you're known for, is like when people ask that question. So it's
they're stupid.
Why should you have a discount?
And it's not a late entry fee; it's procrastination tax.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Okay, so you've got other races coming up that you put on. You've got the next one up on your list. Well, maybe, right? Logan Peak.
Logan Peak will happen.
Is it a snowshoe event?
Well, it might be. When you look at the Tony Grove Snowtell, It's showing 12 feet of snow
My God.
right now. Ben Lomond Snow Tell is
Oh,
showing
yeah.
16 feet of snow, and they're supposed to get another 3 feet over the next 2 days. So, yeah,
Will be like an altered thing, like
I don't know. If it's on the regular course, I can almost guarantee that we will not be going up the peak because there's just so much snow.
yeah.
And that there will not be an aid station on the backside of the peak.
Okay.
And that has happened in the past, and people have had to cross a couple, 3 miles of snow,
Yeah.
4 feet deep. That may happen this year. I'm going to start looking at alternate routes if need be, so that I'm prepared for that. Probably in the late May time frame, I'll go up there and just kind of scout around and see what the course looks like. And
Trim it,
sure,
take down deadfall from avalanches.
right. But I've already put that on the registration page to not expect the aid station on the backside of Logan Peak.
I think that's fair. I mean, again, as a race director, these are the things people don't have to think about, but race directors do. 'Cause
Right.
I've seen that even this week on races. Peterson Ridge Rumble up in the Bend area, they've got a bunch of snow,
Oh, yeah.
which is not something that's normal.
Right.
There's just a lot of races right now that you just don't expect, or it's like we never have it, or it's minimal, or whatever. And now you're kind of like, God, like this, are we gonna have it?
Right.
You look at a lot of these earlier season mountain races, Squaw Peaks, for example, in June.
Oh,
Pocatello.
John's going to have a mess load of snow up there.
Yeah. So, but it changes the game a little bit,
It
right?
does.
And so I think these are things that are important to think about. So you got Logan Peak, and then we transition into August,
Right.
and you've got your Harriman race, so you should be
Idaho.
good for that one.
I don't know.
I mean, in August, you hope. So you've got that one, which is a pretty unique race in its location.
Right. I mean, you and I went up there into Harriman in May,
Yeah,
and there was still snow on the course.
yeah. That's a pretty area.
And this is a far worse snow year than then.
Yeah. Well, I can't even think of the last time we've had anything close to this. Like, I know records are broken
Well,
here.
yeah, records are broken here without
But I mean,
a
even
doubt.
close. There's not
Right.
been close, but we've seen snow. So that one's in August, and then you've got the Fall Classic in November back on the island.
Yeah, November 3rd.
And that one is a distance of a trail half marathon and a 50K.
Yes.
Okay. So you got your work cut out for you on the race side. What about your personal side? Because you run, and you just came back from a race in Mesquite.
Yeah, down in Mesquite, I
Okay.
ran Flat Top Mesa. It was kind of cool race. I mean, it was very small. As far as 50Ks go, it was 4 loops around the top of a mesa.
Okay.
Hence the name. And just to give you an idea how small this race is, I took 3rd overall,
That's good.
2nd place male, and I'm 64 years old. And I ran an 8-hour time.
So, I mean, we'll just say smaller race. Yeah.
It's a well done race. They have 2 aid stations up there. It's four loops around an 8-mile course, and yeah, I mean it was nice to get out of the snow here and go run when it got up to like 65 that day.
Wow.
It was lovely.
That's a warm day right now.
Yeah,
Super warm day.
so that was nice. I recommend that race. It was a good one.
And then what else do you have on the calendar for the year? Either
I'm
adventure runs or races.
So I'm signed up to run Salt Flats 100 in May.
You did not. You did
I
really.
did, yeah. I know. Need my head examined.
So you got a 100-miler coming up.
Yeah, that'll be my first one since 2019 Bear if I manage to finish it. We'll see.
And then what do you got?
Nothing as far as adventure runs until we go down to Grand Canyon.
Grand Canyon in
When is that?
November.
November.
Yep.
That's about it. It's a pretty low key year. I'm getting old, and I don't race as much as I used to, and
But you still run a lot.
I do. But what I've discovered is as I get old, and it sucks, but what are you going to do? is that you train for a 100-mile race, you still have to run the same number of miles as when you were 30. But it takes longer and hurts more. and then you just fall into depression.
Yeah. It's just different, right? It's a mind, you got to shift your mental.
Yeah, you have to shift I'm not fast anymore. I can't keep up with the kids like I used to, which is fine. I would much rather nowadays just kind of go out and enjoy it. And I walk when I feel like it and run when I feel like it and enjoy it.
Take selfies when you feel like it.
I don't do that too much, but yeah.
Well, I mean, and two, again, it's not just here, but I can easily speak for it. It's a tough year to train for a race.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I mean, you can't get up in the mountains to run.
Mm-mm.
I mean, I see people posting pictures, hey, I got up in the mountains. Yeah, it was not much of a run, but it was a hell of a workout.
Yeah. Well, like the Malin stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's a good for hill repeats or,
right.
Getting some vert, but like a true running plan, like I'm trying to do that. And now there's even days I can't even get on the parkway or road because it's so nasty.
Right.
Right. And usually it's like, okay, if I have to, I'll jump on, some asphalt. Well, you can't even find it anymore, or
right.
there's snow piles taller than you or ice or, whatever it is. So it is a tougher year here to train for an earlier season run.
Yep.
So it does make it a little more difficult to do that. And then, so is there anything you're thinking about in the year? So you've got like basically the 100-miler in May, and then realistically not until November. Are you looking at like either some like fun run, like getting up to another place, another mountain?
Well,
location.
We've got the usual spots around here, Ben Lomond, Lewis Peak, and, places like that. We're not even going to be up Ben Lomond until August.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we've been up there at the end of June and had that whole backside.
I've been up there July 4th weekend and separated my shoulder.
Yeah. Was that the weekend you did that?
It was because I couldn't get into a doctor.
Up there too.
It was an extra day.
Yeah.
So that was July 4th.
Yeah, when the glaciers finally recede, it's going to be like September.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think this whole year is going to be interesting on all the floodings. I mean, the rivers are raging right now.
Think of all the all the water that's going to be coming down.
Yeah, and the trails are going to be nasty.
Yep.
For a while. Yep. And I'm just hoping here that it doesn't give rattlesnakes a longer breeding period to where they can just make more.
Well, if that's the case, let's just hope that it's too cool and they just kind of are moving a little slower.
They're not so frisky. It's like, I got a headache, honey.
Yeah.
Type thing.
Yep.
Well, crazy. Yeah, I'm glad everything worked out this weekend. I mean, that's a big thing. It does. I mean, after in hindsight, kind of talk about it a little bit. But ideally, I mean, some of the biggest messages we could do, and that's why I wanted to get you on early. From a race director standpoint compared to a runner standpoint, I'm super happy to hear that the runners there were okay and there wasn't people getting all pissy and whatever else.
Right. No, it was a very stressful day, but everything worked out in the end just fine.
Good. What I think it also does is it shows other races, right? That if you plan accordingly, if you keep a calm head, if whatever, it's going to be okay. Right, because you just don't see it. You see it more, and I think maybe it's back to that old thing is you see it more because of social media and the ease of seeing it more. Right. Not to say it didn't happen 15 years ago, but it wasn't as easy to access real time. Yeah. Right, I'm watching videos, on my Instagram feed of your race real time.
Yeah,
so I think there's that, but it is. I mean, ultra running, trail running. Being outside in general in the mountains, it's, you got to really take stuff into your own hands all the time and not rely on anybody.
Rely on yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's a good reminder, and especially when everything works out well, it's a really good reminder to say, okay, stuff like this happens. I need to be smart, right? So just come prepared, whatever that looks like. I mean, I've talked to somebody even after this just recently, and I'm like, when I go in the mountains, I've been in the Uintas and it snows in August. I mean, Pocatello in June. I mean, when you get to either higher elevations too, it's nice to have a little kit type thing, whether it's a space blanket. And
whenever I do an adventure run, whether we're running across Zion, whether we're doing Grand Canyon, or just something where we're going to be out.
Tetons.
Yeah, the Tetons all day. I always pack enough calories and clothes and supplies that I can spend the night. It might not be comfortable,
Yeah.
but I will live.
Survive the night, right?
Yeah, so a space blanket, maybe a long sleeve tee or a beanie, matches and a lighter,
Yeah.
a couple of candles, stuff that will help you, survive a night out there so that the next day either search and rescue can find your sorry butt or you can self-extract.
Yeah. Well, and not go down the rabbit hole too much on this, but it's something I've wanted to do for a long time. It's, you think about it, like I remember Joel Hatch running with him a few times, and we're really remote, right? No cell service. And then you think, okay, what if I fall?
You fell, broken ankle?
Yeah. What if I smacked my head? What's the plan there? So I think it's always smart, especially the people, like I see people right now, and it's concerning. We're getting to the point, avalanches have been going all year, and now it's kind of getting worse. And I still see people on the worst days, snow, drifts, everything, going up Maylands at 5 a.m. And it's like funny to crawl through drifts. And I'm like, boy, you have you don't have any idea. And there was an avalanche up Maylands not too long ago this year, like a month or so ago. Mm-hmm. And it really makes me nervous. It's like I understand the joy of the sport and wanting to do a challenge, but boy, you just have to be a little more cautious sometimes.
Right.
And I think more important now in the backcountry with the weather, like super warm today. Me and Harrison ran just on the shoreline. We went out, came back. As we came back, there were snow slides on the trail. Mm-hmm. Not like bury you in an avalanche, but I mean, if that's that low on the shoreline, I mean, up top, it could be really crazy. So, it's just a good reminder. Hey, be careful out there. Be smart. If you have a plan to go do something and it's too dangerous, go do it another day, right? Yeah. I mean, there's nothing worth risking so much for that it becomes a bad experience in general. Exactly. So, all right, Jim. Well, we're going to let you go.
Oh, I need to. I was listening to Kirk's.
Kirk Probasco. We just had him on his first 50.
You were talking about outfits and kits and all that. I have some words to add to that.
Okay, here we go, Kirk. I hope you're listening.
So, Kirk, Just for a little background, every time I prep for a race, the lovely Mrs. Skaggs always comes up to me and says, well, do you have your outfit picked out for tomorrow? And I just say, of course I do. So you guys are debating, well, do you call it an outfit? No, that's more a date thing.
Yeah.
And the lovely Mrs. Skaggs once again pointed out that's probably appropriate in my case because the mountains are my mistress.
Oh.
She claims.
Oh.
So, outfit, maybe okay. We'll go with that. But then you were talking about kit, and kit's a European term. We don't use that. We're Americans here.
I'm a soccer guy. We call them kits in soccer.
Right.
Probably from Europe, but yeah.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah.
So, but we're in America here.
So
we gear up.
Okay, I like that.
So we get our gear together.
Okay.
Do you have your gear ready?
I like it because even Kirk at one point, I love it. It's gear up and suit up and whatever. Yeah. He had something I don't even remember. It was like a week ago. I'm out of it. I like that, but I'm gonna say, I hate to say it on a podcast, but after what your wife said, I'm kind of like an outfit. Because, if the mountain's your date or your mistress, I'm like, okay, I would almost let outfit slide now. It's just a mind shift in perspective. I'm like,
right.
I mean, I probably won't, but I like it. I think I would allow it now. So, Kirk, I'll allow it, but I'll still make fun of you. But I do like gear up. Yeah, suit up.
Gear up here in America.
Yeah. I like that, gear up. So maybe that's what we'll talk, because we do have like our gear show. Like we talk gear guide. What's your gear?
You don't have a kit show. You have a gear show.
Yeah, and shorts are gear, shirts gear. I mean, I don't think it just relies down to shoes or hardware. Right. So I like that. So gear. So we will try and slide that into our normal process and call it gear. However, I will allow outfit. Might have some repercussions. It might have some repercussions, but I'll allow it. And it depends on when someone says it, the twinkle in their eye.
Right.
Because if it twinkles, I'm like, okay, they do have a relationship with the mountain.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. Man, Karen's on point. That's awesome. All right, Jim. Well, thanks for joining us. We're going to have you back on at some point. There's a few other shows we want to do, but thanks for taking the time. And thank you, and way to go on the event last week, because, again, it's like one of those things. You'd like to think you can handle something in a stressful situation, but you never know till it happens. So I'm glad you were there to take care of it. I'm also really happy to hear about all the support with volunteers and runners and families. I think that's fabulous. So thanks for coming on, giving us a little rundown of that, and we'll probably talk to you later.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Jim. And I can't wait. We'll probably be back on to talk about your other races too, because those are pretty fun, and hopefully able to come up and help out, mark course, volunteer, whatever. Thank you for listening to the Trail Manners podcast. I'd like to thank Jim Skaggs for joining us today. I also want to encourage everybody to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Trail Manners, or go check out our website at trailmanners.com. You can check out our store page, which will be revamped here soon. Or you can hit us up on the contact page. Let me know what you want to hear, who you want to see, or if you'd like to be on the show. And if you just take a moment, please, to subscribe to the show, leave us a rating or review on iTunes or Facebook, or just send us a message. Truly would appreciate that. Until next time, this is Eric Manning reminding you, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. Now go get it.